Bonjour à tous.
Good morning, everyone.
Merci d'être là.
Thank you for being here. I'd like to introduce you one after the other, and then we'll start the press conference per se. Next to me, Dimitri Rassam, the producer of the film.
À ses côtés,
Next to him, Mohamed Bida,
qui est l'auteur du livre
who is the
dont le
author
film a été
of
inspiré
the
et qui est
book,
surtout le
which
héros
inspired the
dans tous
film,
les
and
sens
who
du
above
terme
all is
de
the
ce film.
hero in the true sense of the word, the hero of the film.
De l'autre côté,
On the other side, we have Alexandre Smia, who is the co-author of the script.
Lina Coudry, sa principale
Lina
interprète
Coudry,
féminine.
the main female actress.
Roche Dizem, qui
Roche
incarne Mohamed
Dizem,
Bida à
who
l'écran.
plays the part of Mohamed Bida.
Et le chef de cette
And
petite
of course,
bande,
the head of this
Martin
group,
Bourboulon.
the director Martin Bourboulon.
Je vais entamer et poser la première
I
question,
will
mais
ask
qui
the
sera
first
sur du
question.
ressenti. Je voulais savoir comment
I'd like to know
les uns et les autres avaient
how
vécu la
it
projection
was
de ce film, la
watching
découverte, la première
the film being screened last night, the premiere last night.
Martin,
Who'd like to start?
Bonjour
Martin?
à tous.
Good morning, everybody.
Ça a été un moment
I'll be brief.
pour nous tous effectivement
For
extrêmement
all of us,
fort.
it was a very powerful moment, and personally
extrêmement
speaking,
émouvant. On m'avait
it was
prévenu
deeply
ce que
moving.
ça allait être intense.
I was warned that things would be intense, and I can promise you it went well beyond
Le film a
what I
démarré,
had
effectivement, de
imagined.
le présenter dans cette grande salle, c'était
To see the
absolument
film in
merveilleux.
this
Et surtout
huge
entouré de tout le
room
monde.
was quite extraordinary,
Très très belle expérience.
particularly considering I was accompanied by the crew.
Pour faire écho
It
à
was
mon
a fabulous
camarade Martin,
experience.
oui, il n'y a rien qui
To
remplace
echo
le
what
fait de
Martin
montrer un film
said,
pour la première fois à
yes,
Cannes,
it
dans
is
cette
irreplaceable
salle-là.
to watch a film for the very first
voilà,
time in
plus
Cannes,
particulièrement avec
and
et notre
particularly
équipe et
with
Mohamed, parce
both
que c'est
the crew
la
and
dimension,
Mohamed.
voilà, de l'histoire vraie de
It's
ce
a
film.
true story
Pris
in
toute
this
sa
film,
ampleur.
and
C'était assez fou
it
à
really
vivre.
hits
Et
you
je salue
hard.
aussi mon camarade Ardavant
And,
Safé, avec lequel j'ai produit le film.
Together
on part
with
sur des aventures comme ça,
the
on sait pas
co-producer
où on
working on
arrive,
this kind
et
of adventure,
arriver à
you
Cannes,
know where you start, you
très,
never
très
know
heureux.
where you'll end up, and being in Cannes is
comment ça s'est
incredible.
passé pour vous aussi?
And what's it like for you, Mohamed? It was deeply impressive. The film was extremely moving. I wrote the book. I thought I would be fairly critical of the film, but in fact, I was swept over by the film, bowled over, in fact. Of course, I knew the tale from beginning to end already, but truly I was deeply impressed. It's so incredibly realistic, thanks to Martin. All the actors are amazing in their performances. I believe that through the cinema, you can convey messages that you can't convey through just writing. You lend this event a much bigger scope, which took place over 3 years ago, and it didn't have the kind of impact it should have at the time. Alexandre?
Bonjour à tous.
Good morning, everybody. I agree with Mohamed.
Dimitri Ardavant, Martin.
Together with Dimitri and Martin, it's been an amazing adventure. What was decisive was to meet Mohamed, however. Over and beyond the tale about the fall of Kabul, it became his own story within the fall of Kabul. And I was sitting next to him at the screening yesterday, and to sense his emotion next to me was deeply moving. And Lina, you've been up the red carpet time and again, but what about the screening last night? I was deeply moved. It's the first scene. It's the first time I've been sitting next to Dimitri and others, and I had Martin sitting on one side, and I thought it's incredible. I'd never seen people stand up before the film had even come to an end. This huge wave of emotion, seeing all these people around us who were overwhelmed by the film. I was thinking of Mohamed as well, and I thought, well, I hope it's going to be okay for him. It's an awful lot to take.
plein d'émotions. On est hyper
It
heureux,
was
en
so
fait,
full of
que
emotion,
le
that
film plaise, et
screening.
c'est un cadeau qu'on
And the
nous
fact
fait
that
en nous
spectators
invitant à
loved the
Cannes.
film
Et
is
pour
a
vous,
true
Rushdie,
gift. And for
après,
you,
finalement, 30 ans
Rushdie,
après Nous tu vas mourir, vous avez vécu beaucoup de
30
Cannes.
years after your first film, you've been to Cannes many a time,
réalise à quel point on ne s'habitue jamais
but one never grows accustomed to it. You can never grow accustomed to the kind of emotion you get from watching a film. Martin, Mohamed were discovering this atmosphere together with me, and we're sort of at a crossroads here in Cannes. You can see passion, creation, that's love for the cinema. I kept saying to them, well, you'll see, but even I discovered this deep emotion last night as well. It's overwhelming to see the kind of emotion elicited by the film. First question?
Non, c'est en anglais.
Bonjour, je suis Dariusz Tavatavai de Netzwerk.de, l'Allemagne. Merci
I
pour
come
ce
from
film.
Germany. Thank you very much
Le
for
dernier
this
acte était
film,
très
and in
émouvant pour
particular,
moi.
the last part was deeply moving for me. I have a question for Alina
J'aimerais bien savoir si votre
Koudry.
troisième film que vous avez fait ensemble.
This is the third film you've done together.
Appréciez l'un de l'autre.
What
Merci beaucoup.
qualities do you appreciate in each other together with Rushdie
Martin, vraiment, c'est
and Martin?
quelqu'un qui m'a invité
Martin
dans ses univers à chaque fois.
Has invited me into his universe each time. He's taken me to different places. I deeply admire his work because he masters so many different genres. He's imagined me as Henriette, Eva, and many other characters, and I feel so fortunate to have him in my life. Of course, we struck up a true friendship. Now it's much easier to work together because we know each other well. I understand immediately what he's saying to me. We listen carefully to each other. So thank you, Martin.
C'est vrai que je résumerai un peu ce que dit
Well,
Lina.
it's true. I could sum up what Lina has just said.
Très agréable dans le travail.
It's very, very
Et c'est aussi la
pleasant
force et la
to
puissance
work
des
with
grands
someone
acteurs
you
et
know
des
so
grandes
well.
actrices.
And of course,
qu'on
great
arrive très
actors and
rapidement à se
actresses
projeter,
have this
à projeter des nouveaux
asset.
personnages à chaque fois
They
sur eux, et
can
effectivement, après Constance
immediately
Bonasset, quand j'ai commencé à
embody
faire
new
Carême,
characters.
la série pour Apple TV. Je me suis raconté
When I
que
was
c'était
working
aussi
on
Lina
the
qui
series
ferait
for Apple
Henriette,
TV,
en
I
tout cas, je
thought,
l'ai proposé.
well,
Et
Lina
sur
would be
ce
perfect
personnage
for
d'Eva,
Henriette, and
Arnaud,
as to
Dimitri et moi, on
Eva,
était absolument convaincus.
well, Dimitri and
C'était
I
aussi
were
Lina
convinced that
qui
she was the right
devrait être
person.
notre Eva, donc
We
voilà.
thought Lina must at all costs
Lina.
be Eva. Thank you, Lina.
Oui, deuxième question. En anglais cette fois-ci.
Question here from Brazil, Correio da Manhã, Rodrigo Fonseca. Question to Martin. It's a very emotional approach to a tragic story. We are talking about human beings, but it's also an action film. And I would like to understand what was your approach to the action strategies that were taught by Hollywood historically, and how would you define the concept of heroism in a film like that?
Je vais formuler une réponse en français, parce qu'il est encore tôt dans ma journée.
I'll give my answer
Ce qui est
in English,
difficile,
in French.
je reprends un peu le sens de la question, mais c'est de résumer aussi la manière dont on a approché
It's
ce film.
hard to sum up one's
C'est
approach to
considéré
the
depuis le
film,
début qu'il y avait,
but basically right
en
at the
réalité,
outset,
deux genres très
we
forts
felt
qui constituaient
there
ce
were
projet.
two
Il y avait un volet effectivement
genres
plus
in this
action,
project. There's the
avec une dynamique de
action
thriller qui
film
racontait
side.
de
It's
manière
like
très
a
chronologique
thriller
les faits
in chronological
de cette
order.
expédition et de cette exfiltration,
You
qui,
can
je le
see
rappelle, est
this
une des opérations
exfiltration,
françaises les plus
which
complexes
is
que la
one of the
France ait
most
jamais
complex
organisées.
French
Et il y avait aussi
operations
un
ever
autre volet
organized by the
auquel on
country.
tenait énormément,
And there's
quand on a
another
commencé à travailler
dimension
avec
we
Alexandre,
were
et
very
finalement,
keen
au
on
début
when
de
we
la
started
lecture
to
avec
do the
Ardavant,
work
ça
with
fait
Alexandre.
quand on se rendait compte aussi de la dimension
We
très forte
realized
émotionnelle,
that there was a
mais qui
strong
devait
emotional
exister
dimension in the
dans le
film.
point de vue
However,
de
it
cette
had to
opération,
exist
c'est-à-dire dans le point de
from the
vue
stance
du
of this
personnage
venture, this
de Mohamed
operation,
Bida.
from the point of view of
La
Mohamed
manière à
Bida
moi de
as a
faire vivre le
character.
destin de ces femmes et de ces hommes qui quittent
Look
un
at the
pays
fate of
de
these men
manière
and
forcée, alors
women
qu'ils ne
forced to
souhaitent pas
leave a
forcément, c'était de
country whereas they
raconter
don't necessarily want to leave.
l'exfiltration française
We
et
wanted
d'essayer de
to
faire
talk
vivre à
about
la
the
fois
French
cet aspect
exfiltration and show this
et en même
thriller
temps,
aspect while at
émotionnel
the
le plus
same
possible.
time conveying the emotional side of things.
Bonjour. Ma question est pour
I have a
étudiant
question.
en école de commerce. Ma question est pour
I
Monsieur
study
Rassam
at business
et
school.
Monsieur
I have a
Bourboulon.
question for
Donc
Mr.
là, avec ce
Rassam and
film,
Mr.
vous,
Bourboulon.
vous concurrencez
With this
finalement
film,
des films à
you're
gros budget,
competing with
d'autres pays,
big
et
budget
vous,
films
luttez
made by
finalement
other
contre
countries.
cette idée que la France
You're
n'est plus
fighting
capable
to uphold the
de faire
idea
de tels films.
that France can make
D'après
this
vous, quels
kind
sont
of
les
film.
avantages
What are the
que vous avez,
advantages
que la France a
of France in this kind of production? How can the country compete with such production in other countries? Well, for me, it's not a question of saying big budget or not. You have to just live up to the kind of story you want to tell. When I was asked to read the book, I knew that it would be quite a huge project if we were to pay justice to the topic. We needed to do a fine balancing act. You have the artistic side of things, but we wanted the film to be widely disseminated, seen by many, many people. And also, in the French cinema, you have great latitude when it comes to taking up a topic. There are fewer standards. You can, in fact, afford to be different. That's one of the specificities of the French cinema. We didn't turn up in the morning and say, oh, what kind of a big-budget film can we make now? We were just attracted to a given project, a given story, and then we tried to find the means to make the film. This is the fifth film we've done together with Martin, the fourth or fifth, with Carl Davon and with Pathé. And it's this trust that enables us, project after project, to become ever more ambitious and to take up ever more ambitious topics. There's no magic formula. I think that what's specific to the French and European cinema is that there are no pre-ticked boxes that you have to comply with. You can just draw your inspiration from what is best in the French and American film industry. It's not a question of competing with this or that country or this or that system. Why did you want to make a film about this book? Once again, one can pay tribute to Aldabon. They called on us, so perhaps you'd like to say a few words about this yourself. No, he doesn't want to take the floor. I think we were all moved by different parts of the story. Aldabon, then I, and then Martin. In turn, we read the book, and 1 week later, things appeared self-evident. We wanted to work together. We wanted to put this story on the screen. The story really spoke to Martin. Had Martin not been so enthusiastic, this would never have turned into a film. Things are a bit mysterious. Why do you decide to embark together on an adventure? But we'd already worked together in the past. Perhaps Martin would like to answer, but we were deeply touched by Mohamed's book, by this story, and in the film. What we wanted people to perceive was what Mohamed went through, and we wanted to depict this incredible experience. Why do you want to undertake a given project? It's quite mysterious. It may take a couple of years. In this case, it was 2 or 3. It's very mysterious. I don't know. At that time, in my work, I was working hard on the editing of the Three Musketeers Milady. We didn't hold the discussion at the time, what are we going to do next, what should we do? I was deeply involved in the Three Musketeers. And then suddenly I happened upon this book in a very unexpected manner. All of a sudden, I had this intuition. This is just right. Very quickly, I saw the book as a film. I thought, if Rochdi doesn't react, what are we going to do? And in the end, very quickly, we talked about the book together. And I said to Rochdi, well, what did you experience when reading the film? Reading the book, I beg your pardon. And Rochdi said, yes, it's great. And that really enabled us to sprout wings. All actors perceive the potential as a film and in terms of the character. I love these stories which are part and parcel of history. We were all deeply marked by this event. And as Mohammed said quite rightly earlier on, the exfiltration of the embassy didn't have the international impact it perhaps should have. So I thought, this is fantastic. I was passionately keen. I read the book just as a normal reader, and I was really overwhelmed by the content. Martin was the director, Dimitri and others the producers, and I thought, wow, the airport, well, we won't see the airport, but we'll know it's there. Afghanistan, well, you'll see there's this little place in France that resembles it. They offered me something, as Dimitri was saying, that would live up to our expectations, of course. You know, often there are things you turn down that shapes your career, but this was self-evident. Obviously, I was going to say yes. And given the other actors and the people in the crew, the answer was obvious. I imagine a lot of people came to see you about this book. What was it in this project that you liked? Was it the people? Well, I discovered a universe I was totally unfamiliar with. I met some producers who said they wanted to make this film. And what struck me with Dimitri and Martin and the other producers, well, they're the only people who used words that weren't commercial. They talked about values. They talked about humanity. They talked about vocation. That's what I tried to convey in my book. I obviously talk about the action taken by France because it's French agents who organized this operation and the diplomats, without asking any questions, but simply basing themselves on the very backbone of their commitment, that is, Republican values, the values which France has upheld throughout the world for many centuries now. And that's why I immediately agreed to join this project. I felt very close to them, and I thought that we shared the same values. Alexandre, how did you manage to achieve this adaptation? Well, I met Martin quite early on. We shared our initial intuitions, and first of all, we talked about the event, that is the fall of Kabul. Then Mohammed's story seemed to be an obvious component within this historical event. We wanted, insofar as possible, to respect the true facts in the story. It's a recent event, and we needed to document ourselves well. Martin was very busy on other things, but we met often together. And then there's Mohammed's life story. We realized that he could become a film character. Just on the eve of his retirement, he had this incredible adventure, and much of Clint Eastwood's filmography inspired us too. We had Mohammed's personal life story, which seemed to fit in beautifully with those who had a similar fate, that is, who had family members or parents who had to leave their country of origin. And this was an emotional component which really impacted us very greatly. Together with Mohammed and others, we shaped the script. How did you prepare for your part, Lina? And Rushdie, when you read the script, what struck you? What did you like in this character, this young lady? The first thing, the first time Ardavan and Martin talked to me about this project, it was before there was an actual script. We met together, all four of us. There was Alexandre as well. We talked together, all four of us. And they were so incredibly enthusiastic. They were so excited, so motivated by the project. Obviously, as I know them quite well, I've already worked with them, and I said to myself, well, I know where we're going. I know where we're heading. I thought that I would obviously love the script. I read through it, and I found the character a very powerful one. She has nothing to do there. You don't expect her to feature in the script. For me, it was a very functional part because she was going to embody the whole of the story, and she lies at the heart of the whole of the story as it unfolds. It was beautifully written, and as Rushdie said, well, we didn't ask ourselves any questions. We said, yes, we'll do it. We talked a lot with Martin and others. Without him, I would never have been able to play the part of Eva. He helped me no end. He told me a lot about Kabul and the people who had to leave. He told me his tale and that of others. I drew inspiration, therefore, from all this with the help of all these people who were very supportive, and I tried to be as faithful as possible to the real character. Rushdie, you can't turn down that kind of a part. Once you accepted it, you probably felt, well, this is Himalaya that I'm going to have to climb. The character is a very factual person. He's very upfront. He wanted to pay tribute to the mission entrusted to him. That's the only idea he had in his mind. Of course, you have to be brave enough, and I had to dredge up sufficient bravery to portray the character. He's also very patriotic, which is not someone you often find. In the military and in the police, you find patriotic people. I've acted a policeman, so I understand their psychology quite well. We worked well with Alexandre and Martin. We thought, well, he needs to have weak points as well. How does a character turn into a hero? We also wanted to lend him a given humanity. His hands tremble, he has doubts, he feels very alone. It was a huge decision to take. After all, we felt it was essential to portray these aspects of the character on the screen. His doubts, his fear, his worries. We thought that would make the character a more believable one. You knew it would not be shot in the Creuse. You knew it couldn't be shot in Afghanistan. How did you find the right place for the shooting? And how can you make things believable, make things appear to be shot in Kabul on the screen? Well, I've been working for a long time with the same crew. Some people come and go, but basically, I work a lot with Stéphane Taillasson. He's worked with me on many of my films. And he worked with us on the Three Musketeers. I'll tell you a little story. Stéphane went to do some location scouting in Casablanca, and he found this place, which for us is a very important one, because we would be able to recreate the atmosphere of Kabul there. We obviously couldn't go to Afghanistan. It's a bit mysterious. We use very technical words like patina, for example. That meant a lot to us. Why is it going to be believable as Kabul? It's because of the patina. In other words, what I'm trying to say is that the wall gives you the impression it's not brand new, that it's been damaged by the sun, and that suddenly creates a whole visual universe which makes things believable. With the Three Musketeers, it was a similar experience. That dates from 2022. We needed to step outside the real world of the Three Musketeers, but create something totally believable. And I shared all this with Stéphane when it comes to the locations. So we shot the film in Morocco, in Casablanca, with absolutely fabulous crews. There was a huge amount of work done with the crowd scenes. There were about 10,000 extras, and the the extras, well, it's not an easy matter. They're not actors, so they had to be believable too. They were incredible, absolutely amazing. Thanks to the Moroccan crews who helped them to act properly and took great care about the costumes. We also wanted to step to one side in terms of what you usually see in these kinds of films. We want to have cameras on the shoulder. We wanted the scenes to be extremely intense. We wanted to film things in a very slow way, as though we were lagging behind the actors, to show the intensity, the actual pace of what people were experiencing. So it was a very different experience from the Three Musketeers. Those are the tricks of the trade we use to tell the story. Mohamed, did you assist Rushdie when he was preparing for this part? Well, I'll jump in there. I needed to do my own personal work before embarking on this character. I pretty much understood quite quickly what I wanted to do, and then things gradually matured in my mind. Then we met with Mohamed, and he was very different indeed from what I had envisioned in my mind. As I said earlier on, meeting Mohamed motivated me no end because he's so incredibly humble. As I said earlier on, Mohamed, you have to really fish out the information. What he says is never exaggerated. That's also something I wanted to portray in my character. How do you become a hero? Yet, how do you accept to remain in the shadows at the same time? It's quite rare. Everyone is trying to create a huge reputation for him or herself, but look at this guy. Look at what he did. He participated in something that's quite extraordinary. You have to be so hugely courageous. Yet, when he talks about all this, he minimizes the part he played, and that is something I find overwhelming. It's the total contrary of what people do and what you see today. So that's another thing I tried to incorporate in my performance. When you talked with Rushdie, what did you feel? Well, it's the first time I've been interrogated, basically. No, what did I feel after meeting Rushdie? I felt that he'd seen through me, and when I read in a magazine in December that after meeting me, he said, we have to turn the character into someone who doesn't look like a hero. And as an actor, he fully understood the situation. Our meeting lasted for perhaps less than an hour, but he instantly understood what he needed to do. And seeing him on the screen, he's incredible. He's exceptional. Dimitri, producing the film was perhaps a whole series of Himalayas. What was it like? Well, we had wonderful Afghan actors too, and I'd like to pay tribute to them. Mohamed, as he knew, worked with quite a big team, and there are some people who knew this story from within, and we felt we had to do them justice in the film. It's like what Rushdie was saying. We had to have the requisite means to live up to the story. It's perhaps quite different from what we've done more recently. When you indulge in pure fiction is inherent in the cinema. But when you have the Three Musketeers or Monte Cristo, you can stand back from the situation. You don't have to say, I need to pay justice to the real people. In this instance, with Martin, we realized we had to find the right people in the crowd, the right look, because these are people who had to leave their country. We have to elicit a form of empathy. And these people, they didn't want to go, but they had to. We're talking about thousands and thousands of people. Some of them are now imprisoned in their own country. Others felt they had to leave their country. They had no choice. And each at a given point in time, Rushdie, myself, and others, well, we wouldn't be in France if someone hadn't come to this country.
en train de vivre la vie qu'on vit,
So,
c'est parce que quelqu'un nous a accueillis.
if we can lead the life we currently live, it's because we were welcomed in this country. We were able to establish a life here. It's a bit different.
D'un film, on va dire,
therefore,
qui est de pur divertissement. Voilà.
From a film which is designed purely for entertainment. We thought that if we are to live up to all this, we have to create a really gripping film. So we thought, well, even if they're different, you have Argo and others, some of Clint Eastwood's films, they're truly gripping, and that enables you to grapple and live up to the truth you're trying to talk about. What was it like working with the various actors? Was there a lot of rehearsing, for example, in the case of this film? How did you go about things?
Une citation, enfin j'aime bien
well,
la
there's a quote
Spielberg,
I like. I think it was Steven Spielberg. Someone asked him one day, how do you direct actors? He said, well, you have to have a good casting process. You start with an idea, you start with this intuition. Once you know you've got the right actors, then half of the job is already done. With Lina and Rushdie, this was very true.
Et qui m'ont beaucoup aidé.
They helped me no end. Each director, of course, has his own method to work with the actors. I love the magic of filming, so I'm not necessarily at ease with very precise rehearsals. There shouldn't be too much preparation, for example. What I do take the time to do, however, is to sit down at a table and talk with the actors. And we read the lines together to try and demine things, overcome difficulties beforehand. If there is something that's not very clear in the plot, a line which seems superfluous, something that makes the actor feel ill at ease, then that's the kind of thing I listen to, rather than saying, okay, action, you need just to forge ahead. That's it's easier to work these things out beforehand, so we do a lot of prior reading together. So it's very precise, it's very powerful for me. I remember with Rushdie that there were certain improvements brought to the script, and I never do without a good idea that I may not have had myself. What do you think if I put this word instead of the other, or this sentence doesn't sound all that good? So we spend a lot of time with that, and not so much when it comes to the shooting. You have to be very precise. And then, of course, what also counts is just to find the things that sound right in the context. And so it's wonderful to be able to work with such a host of marvelous actors. Rushdie. A role, a part, is often just a detail. And in this case, there are the glasses. At a given point in time, he takes them off. It may appear to be just a detail amongst others, but for an actor, maybe it's like a costume. It's something that's very important. Yes, indeed. With glasses, sometimes the spectators can't see what you're expressing in your eyes. In the photos I saw of Mohammed, he tended to wear Ray-Ban glasses. The photos taken in Afghanistan, and they don't really suit me that much. So, as I say, we discuss matters a lot with Martin, and these are real decisions you have to take. As to the glasses, they are a prop which is not meaningless. We felt it was a kind of an extension of his personality. It took us time to find just the right thing to do. Okay, I'm not going to speak at length about the glasses, but it did require some preparation. For me, it was a prop that helped me. It enabled me to really build up the character I was going to portray. We've talked about what happened on the set. You have these scenes, the scene when you're in the middle of this huge crowd. What was it like? Because you're carried away by what's happening. And how did you experience this specific moment? I'd never been on a set with 900 extras who were shouting, running.
Et effectivement, quand tu as autant de gens autour de toi,
When you have that many people around you, it's really impressive to start with. But when someone says action, you have to throw yourself into the scene because you have so many people around you. We ended up in the middle of this huge, this immense crowd. And that really helped us to find the right tone for our character immediately, instantly, because we were in the midst of this shouting, running crowd. It was quite extraordinary. I'd never experienced such a thing. They themselves, the extras, had coaches who helped them to rehearse, taught them how to be in the right place, say the right things. As Martin said, it was exceptional. The journalist in the film was asking why, and what did you think about this character? How did you work on the various characters? Well, we had a character we really liked. We talked about this with Dimitri and Alexandre. It's Claire Sawad, the American actress. She is an essential witness, so to speak, for us when it comes to what's happening elsewhere in the world. This woman has a comfortable life in New York, and she spends all her time going to conflict areas around the world in order to bear witness to the situation and do her job as a journalist. I was deeply moved by this. There was a documentary that showed how important the role of journalists in a time of war are, because they can bear testimony to certain things. I love the scene with Alexandre in the bus. She explained why she was here and this and that and how dangerous it was. It's a human dimension that I really wanted to depict in the film in the midst of this general chaos. Of course, the timeline was a very short one, but I wanted to fit in the journalists and others. Once we'd added this character and we'd reflected on the matter with Louise Ward, she's an amazing actress. You probably saw her in the Borgen series. I love this woman a lot. She's very funny. She's a natural actress, and we offered this part to her. She immediately said yes. She's wonderful in the film, and she accounts for a lot of the intensity in the bus when she's in a state of shock, given what she's just been through. When she's being threatened, it was a very moving moment. One very last question. I know that you love doing these very different adventures. What about this film? And what about the next one? Do you have a project in mind? Or have you decided to just to let this film live its life and then move on to something more? We'll accompany this film until it's released. That's what really obsesses me at this point in time. Thank you very much. Thank you to all six of you.